Well, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Rosenfield webinar series for auto dealers. This is our first installment of the year. Happy New Year, everyone. Um, in case you don't know, Rosenfield and Company, we are a CPA firm that specializes in serving the automotive industry. We've been doing it for over 25 years. My name is Kathy. I'm the organizer of today's webinar. I am here with our founder, Ken, and we are super excited to have Anthony with us today. He's got a really good topic. This is a no-brainer, guys, but I will let him tell you all about that. And as a quick reminder, this is a Q&A. I'm sorry, this is not a one-sided conversation. We want you guys to be part of today's discussion. So please use the Q&A chat feature to submit your questions at any time. I'll be keeping an eye on those. And with that, I'll pass on the floor to Ken.
Well, thanks, Kathy. Look forward to a fun year, some great topics. This is a little bit off key for us, which is really fascinating. So today we're going to have our friend Anthony Fiorino discuss some different kind of topics that we do. It's not really operational, but this is a way to really save some money, get some good tax credits, be good to the environment, and still serve your customers in a good, positive way. So we'll be talking about incentives and tax credits that are available to car dealers for using solar power for charging stations and other systems in their dealerships. And with that, I'm going to let Anthony take it away.
Great. Well, I appreciate being here and the opportunity to speak to everyone. And appreciate.
Right, did you want me?
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And just, I guess, a little bit about me. My name's Anthony Fiorino. I'm the CEO and founder of Emerald Sun Energy. We've been in business since 2015, and we've actually started shifting some of our focuses to some of the available benefits that are accessible to auto dealers. So we're excited to be able to present this information to you. Kathy, go to the next.
Sure. This is just a little quick agenda of what we're going over today.
Yep. Okay. And so again, I'm Anthony Fiorino. I've been in the industry since really 2013, but Emerald Sun Energy has been in business since 2015. Licensed solar contractor, NAPCEP certified, ASES contributor, and nationally published and author. So this is just my one little shameless plug, just to share information that I've been around in the industry, and I have some insights that hopefully you'll find valuable as well. You can go to the next. The first big topic that we wanted to cover, and I think that's why we wanted to do it at the beginning of the year, was a new administration is coming in, and immediately people are a little anxious about what the future was going to entail about the tax credit. So we thought it was a good time to, get a really good temperature of what we're seeing that's even being floated or talked about, what the likelihood of anything happening, and what the future or worst case scenario possibility is even there. The first thing, though, to mention is this is an actual law, the Inflation Reduction Act, where all of these tax credits for all commercial businesses are applicable. So it's not so easy to repeal that law. You have to go through a lot of channels to even do so. And the likelihood is, from what we're seeing, is that that's not going to happen, mainly because there's a lot of major investments that have been made on the manufacturing side, even into red states. So with a Trump administration, he would need full red state support, and I don't even think he'll have that. If there is some form of middle ground that they find, which I think could be a likely outcome if they can get people on board, the tax credits would not be touched. Some of the earmarked money that's already been put into the program, really for municipalities, like grants for municipalities and rural grants, I could see potentially that money being pulled out of the Inflation Reduction Act as a compromise. And I even think that is unlikely, but I think that would be the most likely thing if they were able to do anything. And then on top of that, Elon Musk is kind of in the inner circle for Donald Trump's administration. And, between Tesla being not only for EVs, but for solar as well, we feel like we have a lot of, positive information that will protect the tax credits. But that being said, anything is also possible. So what would be the worst case scenario of that? And you can go to the next, Kathy. So if it was completely repealed, well, the first thing to keep in mind, there would be grandfathered actions, meaning even if they came out and repealed it, it wouldn't be repealed in 2025. It would probably be for 2026 or even 2027 if they decided to do a quicker phase out. So on top of that, anyone that took any actions prior to it actually being phased out would be grandfathered in under what the current law is. And then the next thing I think we would see are states getting a lot more aggressive and stepping into the incentive arena. Now, there are some states that have amazing incentives, and we were actually just discussing a couple of them. New York in the city has their own additional incentive. On top of that, New Jersey has a statewide incentive. So I believe the states will get even more aggressive with their incentives if something were to happen on the national scale. And then just one really quick caveat about the tax credits and all of those other incentives that they're really aligning solar with. They started back in 2006 when there was literally no solar anywhere. So that was the birth of the incentive. Now, just to put it as simply put, solar's cheaper than power. It's that simple. In the last 4 years, the power company, through normal inflationary pressure we all saw, has raised their rates by over 40%. The solar industry remained flat. I mean, if it went up, maybe a couple of percent. So now it's just actually quite a bit cheaper than the power company rates. So really the tax incentives that are available are really like extra gravy on the potatoes right now. I'd love for people to take advantage of them, but even if they were to go away, I think the solar industry is at the beginning stage of budding, and nothing's going to slow that. I mean, it just makes too much sense. It's a cheaper form of energy. It's sustainable, and all of those other good things. The fact that it's already cheaper than what the power company can provide. So those incentives right now, which we'll go through a little bit later, a really neat case study on how you could convert those credits into an actual cash profit to your bottom line. And I think that's why we came up with the title of the topic that Catherine came up with, which I thought was incredible. You can go to the next one.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So the next thing we're going to just cover just some of the benefits that are available for auto dealers when you look at solar energy. First is obviously it reduces energy cost. That's going back to my last statement that solar is actually cheaper than paying the power company now. That improves short-term profitability. We will cover that in that case study and how you can convert those tax credits into actual cash. Reducing long-term expense. This is really where the boatload of incentives really come in and benefit, because we just mentioned the power company raised their rates by 40% over the last 4 years. If you bought solar 5 years ago, guess what? You didn't have any inflationary pressure. That's the reduced long-term expense notion of that. You're insulating yourself from inflation. And the power company, even without like the inflationary pressure we just saw, typically raises their rates by about 4% a year. Some years 2.5 to 3, some years 4 to 5. On average, on any 20-year running average, they raise their rates by 4%, and that was before this 40% over the last 4 years. It'll increase the actual property value. On the residential side, we have definitive information. Zillow nets it at about a 4.1% property value increase. We're an actually Pearl certified contractor. What that means is on a residence, we're able to come in and actually give you an appraisal report after the installation. And we're actually seeing numbers closer to 5% from our appraisers that are appraising the properties. But on the commercial side, I feel more comfortable in that 2% range. And there's just not a lot of data because not a lot of commercial properties have installed solar and then sold it. So there's just not a lot of like competitive information out there for that. But there is some property value increase in that as well. Obviously, an increase in energy independence. There's a lot of other neat things, especially for auto dealers that could be looking at, like EV, full EV structure, infrastructure, microgrids, things of, especially if you're in the Florida region, having off-grid capabilities is valuable. And then even actually some places up north in New York and New Jersey that have demand billing. So a great way to kind of offset some of that billing is having, a more increased energy independence and all of that. In terms of dealership image, and this will go, there's in a couple of slides, I'll show you a lot of the corporate money that has gone towards solar, and it's had just a really positive benefit on both sides. Obviously, if you're someone who's green conscious and you see someone using solar energy, that's just going to be a positive that you want to associate with. And on the other side, people who are more on the financial side have realized that solar is simply less expensive. They appreciate businesses that are able to incorporate that, meaning you're using someone who's using the most efficient methods of bringing you your service. Sustained long-term return on investment, that again starts to compound that return. And we'll see this more clearly in the case study example on over time as the power company keeps raising that rate and you're into a fixed rate that's less than the power rate you're paying now. It just creates a long-term return on investment. And again, you're embracing environmental sustainability, which I think lends towards the brand image. You can go next, Kat. And the commercial solar incentives, and this is really where it's really exciting. Again, we specialize in residential and commercial. We've really been shifting our focus onto the commercial side and for auto dealerships as well, because the incentives are just so great. They're bigger and better than for the residential. And for the residential, they're really good. So the first one is that 30% federal tax credit. That is like the gold standard or star of the incentives. 30% of the cost of the system will be due back in terms of tax credits. And since the Inflation Reduction came out, they've added an additional 10% called the domestic content bonus that you're able to achieve by using percent of U.S. made products. Now, this next one, I don't think many auto dealers are going to be able to capitalize on the low income credit, because most auto dealerships, I don't think, are built in low income areas. So, but if you are in a low income area, there's another 10% possibility available to you as well. And that would also kind of piggyback with REAP grants and things of that nature. Now, state and local incentives, which we just touched on slightly about the potential of even going up if something did happen to the Inflation Reduction Act. But the state and local incentives in states like New York and New Jersey are so astounding that they could add upwards of another 20% in terms of just sheer credits coming back in one form or another. Now, the way they break out, each state has their own and they're a little different, but it's just, again, more money available. And then the final one, which New Jersey has a great program for, which are SREC, they're called SRECs, or solar renewable energy credits. And basically what that program says is for every 1,000 kilowatt hours your system produces, you'll actually get paid by the state with a certificate. And New Jersey has a certificate that will pay you $200 for every 1,000 kilowatt hours. Now, on a commercial project or auto dealership, a lot of them would probably be in the neighborhood of 1,000, anywhere from 600 to 1,000 credits a year. and you get that for 15 years. So you're actually will simply be getting paid to add solar to your energy system. So yeah, and then the next slide will talk about some of the most recognizable brands that you're probably aware of. And we're going to touch on two of these specifically. Huge corporate commitments have been made. They reduced their long-term expenses, huge ROIs, and again, that improvement for brand image. Being in the auto dealerships, we wanted to find the auto group that has made the most purchases, and that's Group 1 Automotive. They have over 5 megawatts of solar right now, spanned over, I think, 160 locations that they have. So they've made a huge investment into solar. And the main reason is not only that it works, once it works, they want to do more and more of it. And now the other example I'll use is Disney, for any of the Florida people tuning in. Disney, I want to say back in 2015, greenlit a 50 megawatt thing. And if anyone's ever traveled on the 429 and see just looks like miles of solar panels, that's Disney. That's enough to power 15,000 homes. Now, again, they're powering their facility, but they just greenlit another 75 megawatts. So obviously, if the 50 megawatt deal wasn't something that was advantageous, I promise you they wouldn't be greenlighting another 75 megawatts. Because the beautiful thing with solar, it actually just continues to get better, because you not only you get the tax credits, but once you see that reduced energy costs and you're insulated from it, it makes a big difference in projecting and how you want to even allocate those or earmark those dollars later into your business. Thanks, Kathy.
I have seen those solar panels, by the way, on the highway. So that's crazy. I do have a quick question about that. You mentioned Group 1 Automotive and Disney have both invested heavily. Do we know like any of the benefits that they've seen since they've done the investment?
Well, I mean, sure. First and foremost, I know with Disney, it's offsetting the energy cost, not only long term, but not only in the short term, but the long term. And since 2015, the power rates have gone up by close to 60% since they put in that first iteration. And that's why last year they wound up greenlighting the next one, because all of a sudden the parts that aren't, they're paying such a higher rate. And like right now in Florida, the average kilowatt hour rate is about 16 cents. And that's without taxes. Like your all-in tax and everything when you're paying is probably 20 to 21 cents. With solar, and this is over the life of the system, your kilowatt hour rate is going to be closer to 8 cents, 9 cents. So you're already coming in at a lower rate than you would be paying the power company. Now, again, depending on how you structure that and get involved, meaning if you bought it in cash, right, which Disney did, they bought their system, they paid it in cash. So initially, you'll be talking about something called payback period, meaning how long before I get my money back, and then how long do I benefit from it. And in this case, with the available incentives on a cash purchase, you're looking at a payback period of between 3 and 4 years with just the federal and depreciation abilities, where the system's guaranteed to perform for 25. So it's a very strong investment that way. So I think those are the key points of what they saw when they got their money back, and they're like, wow, now I'm getting all this free power for the next 21 years. All right, let's greenlight another segment for that.
Anthony, do you know what type of applications Group 1 is using it? Is like for their charging stations, or are they using it for other things, or what do you think they're using it for?
Their main purpose is for the solar, but most of them are now incorporating the EV infrastructure as well. Especially when you're selling EV cars, you need to have to not only realize that a fuel charge that dealerships have, because a lot of them have their own tank on site, right? They're filling their own vehicles. That fuel charge now is going to be converted to an electric charge as more and more EV charges hit the market. So the more robust EV infrastructure you have, the better it's going to be. And you have to also keep in mind, if, like, for example, right now, an auto dealership is billing somewhere, let's just use a round number of $10,000 a month on energy, once their true EV conversion hits, that's going to go up, because now they're going to be charging all of those vehicles on site. On top of that, a lot of these EV infrastructures that are available, you could do DC, level 3 DC chargers, which mean people could come in, put their credit card on file, and come in and charge their vehicle, and it could actually be like a gas station terminal as well, which I know some of the auto groups are utilizing as well. But in terms of Group 1 automotive, their main purpose was to reduce energy cost.
Next slide.
Yep. Okay. All right, I think I almost I started touching on this already, but there's 4 main available purchasing options when you're looking at solar and or EV infrastructure, and when you pair them together, you're able to do it under the same iteration. Now, there are programs to do just EV infrastructure as well without doing solar, and we see some of those as well. But so the first way is obviously with cash, and the payback period is typically, like I was saying, it is about 3 to 4 years, and that's without states that have state incentives. I was looking over an example we were talking about earlier with Ken, like in the city of New York, that payback period is under 2 years, really about a year and a half, because of some state incentives as well. So if you're looking at doing a cash purchase, you're getting that cash back in a very quick period of time for something that's going to work for you a long time. Now, these other 2 here that I have listed, which is lease and PPA. Lease is obviously you're renting the equipment. The PPA, which is called a power purchase agreement, here you're renting it by kilowatt hour usage. So you have a third party who owns the system, and then they're just selling you the power at a reduced rate. So in this earlier example where we said if you had a $10,000 electric bill and you wanted to use a PPA program, company would come in, install the solar, they would own the system, and then they would reduce your power rate from 10,000, let's say, to 8,500. So you're happy in that sense that you've kind of reduced that energy rate. But for my liking, you won't see a lot of need for leases and PPA on the auto dealer side or a commercial side anymore, now that the financing has kind of caught up. So you could self-finance it now and get a better rate and keep the tax credits. Like with any of the leasing options, you give up those credits. The leasing company gets it. So now, unless you're in a situation where, you have no tax liability, then there may be an application for you there. But ultimately, you're going to be better served financing, and there's a main reason for that, the evolution in the financing products that have occurred. But we're going to go into a little deeper on the cash and the financing option now. You can go to the next one. Yeah. So with a cash purchase, basically what we're looking at again is it's called payback period. And it really depends, again, what your main goal for the purchase is. Like if you're like me, also a business owner, I don't know if this is recorded, so maybe I shouldn't say this, but at the end of the year, I make some purchases just because I know that I'm going to be paying another 30% on certain money for that I could, make a purchase for my business and use it as an expense, so to speak, and then, use that depreciation value against it, as opposed to just paying it out that way. So if you're in a business situation and you have a lot of cash on hand that you're going to be liable to pay a lot of tax on, it's a great way to diverse that and make a big purchase like purchasing solar. Now, the beautiful thing with that is you're converting that, that taxable income into an asset that then you're able to depreciate. But on top of that, that asset then is that 40% of that asset's going to have its own tax credit available. And they really removed all of the barriers in 2022. It used to be that you only had 5 years to use that tax credit. Now you have 22 years. So if the tax credit's big enough, you can pick and choose when and how you use it. Obviously, if you can get it in one shot and get it back that same year, great. But if you're, again, making it as a cash purchase, there may be an interest in diluting that over a longer period of time to have that dribble back out. So there are just ways to do that, and that's probably more viable and available on the cash purchase opportunities. Now, it also has the best overall return on investment, mainly because you're paying the least amount, right? If you're paying an amount plus interest, that amount's going to come off of what that total overall ROI is. Now, depending on how we structure the deal, that may not be true either. But in the rawest sense of those terms, just sheer numbers, it is going to give you the best overall ROI. So the biggest difference now in the evolution on the financing side is it changes the conversation. So payback period, what that basically means is it's an expense until you're paid back. When we're looking at on the financing side now, we're talking about cash flowing day one. So what that means is, again, if you're in a situation where your power bill is $10,000 a month and you purchase solar, and now the combination between what your solar payment is because you financed it and what your power bill is, let's say that amount is $9,000. Well, you're making $1,000 a month over what you were spending. So you've reduced your cash outlay by $1,000. So there's no effect to your budget, and you're putting money back in your pocket day one. So it changes that conversation from an out-of-pocket expense. And where I was mentioning earlier, the evolution, literally until less than 2 years ago, the only financing available was like a 7, maybe you would find a 10-year option. And in those cases, it was going to be an expense that entire time, meaning the cost, if your average bill was $10,000, your combination between your loan and your power expenditure is probably would be in that $13,000 to $14,000 range. So you're incurring an additional expense to get to get solar. Now, again, if it's paid off in 7 years, you're going to get that additional 18 years of benefit. So it's still a really strong investment, but again, it would be an expense day one, where now we could be talking about cash flowing because and you could go to the next slide, because you can kind of look at what solar figured out is what the auto dealers figured out years ago, right? When I first bought my first car, I couldn't get a loan more than 4 years. My last car I got was a 7-year loan. So what they figured out is by adjusting the term, we can get it to fit into someone's budgetary needs, and it could then become a valuable resource. So now, especially specifically for commercial solar, there are now 20 and 25-year options available. What that allows us to do is flatten the cost. So again, that $10,000 electric bill, now we could actually cash flow on that because we can get generate all the power that you need and get it less than what you're currently paying. So again, if you were paying $10,000 and now you're down at $9,000, you're saving $1,000 a month. You're doing it with no money down. You're doing it with no money out of pocket, or I should say some of the programs have minimal application fees of $1,000 or $2,000. So you might be into it for that, but there's no real cash outlay to get the program started. Your money is you're already using money that you're paying the power company. So it's, again, no effect to your budget. And if, again, you're going to be cash flowing. And the beautiful part of what's really available, which we're going to see here in the case study, is 20% of that long-term ROI is going to be available in the first 18 months. And that's going to be through this tax credits as well as some accelerated depreciation opportunities that exist as well. So we can look at the next slide. Okay, so here's a recent project that we did. The total cost of the project was $880,000. The size of the system was a 420 kilowatt solar panel system. The tax credit that they received for this was $356,000. And the estimated accelerated depreciation was $160,000. So the total incentives on an $880,000 project was looking at over $500,000. So they're really into it for about $370,000. Now, the best part about it, in this particular case, they were able to cash that $356,000, take it out of the deal, and put it in their pocket. Where this starts to get exciting, at least for me, in presenting this, and if we look at the very bottom line where it says total payment with insurance is $8,000 a month, average power bill offset. So their bill was $81.70 prior to solar. Now it's $80.80. So they're saving $90 a month day one. And they get to take that tax credit and put it in their pocket. Now, there are some ways that some people want to have the lowest monthly bill possible. So we're able to do that as well, where you can take that tax credit and make a principal payment, or where you could either shorten the term from that 20 years and get it down to probably 10 or 12 while still being under what you're currently paying, or just making just a straight principal payment, and shorten the just the amount that you're owed, or get that payment down. I'm sorry, probably to around $4,000 a month, if that was the direction they wanted to go. But what we're seeing is most people taking the money. It's just, I equate it to, a few years back, I know we had that horrible pandemic, but the government did step up with a couple of really amazing programs. One was the PPP program. I equate it similar to that. I actually like an in-between of the PPP program and the EIDL, because you do need to have some borrowing strength, and you are borrowing money, but you're going to be doing it at a way and a rate that will allow you to, convert that credit into actual cash. So you could cash it out or use it for your market for any other part of it that you need to in your business. And in this case, the long-term projected ROI is about $2 million. 1.9 million is what available, and about, again, 350,000, or nearly 20% of it, you're able to achieve in the first 18 months if you have the tax liability to offset it. And then the beautiful part about that, where even though in that earlier slide on the cash, I showed you that, yes, that you'll have the most gross ROI from that. The reality is, if you took that $356,000 cash out and just simply invested that, this method will earn you quite a bit more money than the cash method. So it just, again, depends on how you do that, especially in business. Like we have a slide that shows just how some of those long-term return on investments can be compounded. But literally within your business, your rate of returns are typically much higher than you can get in other areas as well. So the amount that it could earn you in other ways is quite a bit more. So I think that's it for that one.
Awesome. I think these are the return on investment slides.
Yeah. This is the straight ROI, and this basically shows a line by line how you're cash flowing, and this is on a financed that the opportunity we were just kind of highlighting. This is on a financed opportunity. So the beautiful part is you can see on the ROI line that it's never negative, meaning you're cash flowing on it from year one. It never goes negative. And then as you're starting to become more insulated from those inflationary power rate hikes, you'll see that number just continue to accelerate over the life of the system. And then and then you could see, so on the bottom, 2.1 million And on the far one, cumulative ROI, the 1.6 million, I separated there because I want to show you if you took that 550,000 of your total incentives and invested it, what that would look like, which is on that next slide. Yeah. So here I showed with 3 iterations at 4%, at 7%, and then the historic stock market at 10%. If you simply took that incentive over the life of the system, on the high side, you're looking at adding another 5.4 million to your ROI, plus that other 1.6 from that previous slide. That's still going to be accumulating through your annual returns. And then again, even if you use a much more conservative method, you could be at that 2.8 or worse, 1.4 million in additional over that 1.6. You're looking at anywhere from 3 to 7 million in return on investment, and you're able to do it with no effect to your current budget. Meaning you're doing that. If you had a $10,000 electric bill, you can do it and start making, a few $100 a month day one, and never go upside down. And that's where I think the evolution right now and the availability of what solar can do in terms of driving actual income to auto dealerships, on top of obviously earmarking some of those funds again to be maybe more EV infrastructure compliant. And I think that I think that's the bulk of
We
it.
have a couple more slides.
Oh, okay.
I do
Let's
have
see.
a couple of questions as well.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and slide to the next one.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask, and maybe this is more of a question for Ken, but what role does a CPA play in ensuring that a dealership gets the most out of their solar investment?
Well, from our standpoint, it would be helping to do the computation what the ROI is, and seeing if they're financing it or not financing it, and also adding in what the actual applicable credits are. They're pretty straightforward with what the credits are and how to compute them and all that. So it'd just be more from helping out and also advising clients that aren't familiar with this. So we had a lot of clients, like just for example, for the charging stations, they had to work or got denied by their local governmental authorities. They couldn't have the infrastructure to put in the power to power up these charging stations and things like that. So a lot of our clients did was put in their own gas generators to power up the charging stations. It's kind of an oxymoron, but so that's kind of what happened. So here with Anthony's solution, you can have what we had. Our very first picture was the covered charging stations, and they're covered with solar panels, and you have a unique and very workable, sustainable situation to get the charging stations up and running. So it's just something even that simple. So just even from an informational standpoint, I think we could advise our clients this is available. There's some big significant tax credits available, and the ROI is pretty big on it. It's a good return, better than a gasoline generator would be. Alternative power sources.
Great. Yeah, and I guess on this side, the Y Emerald Sun Energy, one of the things that we've really prided ourselves on is really creating a very comprehensive approach. Meaning, if you are looking into this, that's why we're doing these types of events with Ken and Nat. Like any of the clients that we bring to the table would always be brought there to see which method is going to be best and most utilized for you. We have a white glove approach. We simply do more. We assist you in third-party monitoring maintenance, again, tax assistance, transfer brokers. There are some people who can't use the tax credit. We now are part of a network that we can shop them for you and find a buyer for them, so you could actually sell them and they are tax exempt if you sell them. So it's not like it gets added to your income line. And we even do tax credit form assistance and things of that nature. So we really feel like we've done quite a bit in this space to prepare ourselves to be a really great resource and asset for auto dealers out there. And we look forward to doing more of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question, Anthony,
Mm-hmm.
about the future of EV. I mean, next 5-10 years, is there anything that you see happening? Maybe a trend with dealerships? I know EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure is probably a big one.
The EV charging infrastructure is big, and the other one is really I think you're going to start to see more auto dealers, and you have a few companies in there now called Q-Merit. You have Electrum. You have some of these. They're third-party aggregators who are coming in and negotiating with brands to be their EV charger installer. And there's kind of a need for that on one side, but there's probably something better a dealership could do if they have the option, if they're not being forced by the brand to use their Q-Merit or Electrum, is to have a few of those relationships on their own, mainly because then you're able to kind of package it into what you're doing, and the end consumer could know that they're getting a home EV charger install as part of their deal. Because right now, how Electrum and Q-Merit even came to be, which we are also have relationships with them, so we actually even do some of their local installs. But first is when it's left just to the customer, a lot of times they were getting, like a home EV charger should cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of $900 to $1,500, depending on what electrical work needs to be done in your panel. Some of these people are getting hammered at $3,500, $4,500, so when they're left to their own, they don't have a mechanism of what they're shopping against. So a few people were more than dissatisfied with that not being part of the EV buying experience. So I think that is probably one of the bigger ones that we'll see on that. And the second will be, which I think you're starting to see now, these 300 mile range vehicles hit the road, because what do they call it? The range phobia is the one thing that they feel has been holding back the next level of EV chargers, and I think we're coming to that part of being rectified. So I think we're going to see a huge growth on the EV market.
So actually, just in this last quarter, and the NADA just published, came out today, as a matter of fact,
Okay.
that EV sales increased over 100,000 units just in the last quarter.
There you go.
And light vehicle sales increased 8.9%, which a bulk of that increase was EV sales. So that's the first time since 2020.
Wow.
It's been the first time in 4 years that EV sales have eclipsed that amount. And it wasn't just Tesla this time. The leader of the pack was Ford Motor Company. So that tells you who is thinking about tapping out of the EV market in total. Ford Motor Company enjoyed the largest amount of EV sales market share increase in the last quarter than any other manufacturer. So that's pretty big.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great information, and that goes to at least what I'm seeing in the space as well. So yeah, I think we're just going to see that next domino fall, and more manufacturers are getting into the space. So it's not going anywhere; it's growing, and again, at the end of the day, we could, we could be crusaders if we want and call ourselves green conscious, but at the end, finances are always going to dominate the day on what makes our best decisions, and on both fronts. On solar is now cheaper than the electric company rate, and long-term EV savings. Yeah, the vehicle's more expensive, but you make it back in the amount you save. Once you get over that range phobia, you're going to see way more of them, because people are going to love not having to spend a couple $100 a month now on gas, when their electric charge will cost them a quarter of that. And once they start pairing that on the home with solar, Now you're producing the energy that you're charging the vehicle with as well. You're getting a double benefit, and that is like I would say my long-term hope. And I know we've had some discussions where it was, there's definitely more hoops to come through than I would like it there to be. But I think at some point the auto dealers are going to be more involved in solar sales than any other third-party marketer out there. And we'll say third-party marketers are Costco. If you go there, they're selling solar. If you go to Home Depot, they're selling solar. If you go, I think eventually the auto dealers are going to figure out, once they know this person's going to buy an EV, well, guess what? They're also 7 times more likely to buy solar. So once you have that kind of a customer that, if you simply are able to present that, you'll start seeing ways that the auto dealerships could capitalize and have a new revenue stream through solar as well.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you. All right. So for those of us watching today, what is one immediate action that they can take to begin assessing solar opportunities for their business, for their dealership?
Well, again, the first thing would be to have an analysis done on 2 fronts. One, obviously, submitting a power consumption report to see what kind of power demand they need and what they need to offset their electrical rates. 2, a site review to make sure you have either available roof space or areas to build any structure that needs to be built to house the solar production. And then thirdly, to take a peek at the situation to see which methodology is going to work best for the dealership in terms of integration and incorporation.
Gotcha. And if they want to contact you, here is Anthony's information and Ken's information as well. We'd love for you to connect with us. Any finishing remarks before we conclude today's session?
Well, I just want to say thank you again to Catherine and Ken for hosting this. I hope everyone else gets a chance to benefit from the information. And if there's any information or anyone has additional questions, thoughts, and concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them, obviously, on a one-on-one. And if there's ever a demand to do another one of these, I'd be love to do that as well.
Oh, thank you. You've been great to work with, so we really appreciate you being our guest today. And thank you, Ken, and thank you everyone for being present today. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you at our next installment, which will be next month. So I'll catch you guys there. But with that, thank you, and I will be publishing the recording by the end of this week.
Great. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Good job.